Welcome back to part 2 of my discussion with coach, global director of consulting at CoachHub, and author Sam Isaacson on how to thrive in a digital world. If you missed part 1, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that, but look forward to this one. We start to discuss an awful lot more about the development of technology, particularly AI and machine learning, and how that may impact the coaching industry at large. Remember to subscribe and like to support the channel, and again, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also included in the description is a link to Sam's book, so check it out.
I'd like to take our conversation to the future now, if we may, Sam, because I think what captures a lot of people's imagination, for better or worse, I guess, is the development of technologies like AI, which is, as you point out in the book, is really a collective term. It's things like machine learning that we're really concerned about or talking about. And even since the 1960s, these experiments like ELIZA, which is the sort of online therapy thing, can be, if anyone hasn't done that before, you can just Google. There's lots of free ones, isn't there? And, okay, sometimes you have to make it a little bit easy for that technology, but it can spit out some interesting sequences of questions, which, if you're engaged and bought into it, might bear some fruit, some benefit to you. But technology's moved on a lot since the 1960s. There's a lot of talk about AI. Is there writing on the wall for coaches? If so, how long have we got left?
Yeah. What would happen if I just said 18 months?
Panic.
Yeah, so I think if we ground it in something that we understand and we've experienced, a lot of us will have worked with some sort of chatbot on a retail website or something. If you want to return something on Amazon, you just open up the chatbot, have a little back and forth conversation, and it all gets managed for you. It's brilliant, efficient, extremely scalable, so a good experience. You don't have to talk to anyone, it just gets done. But it isn't really like having a conversation with somebody.
No.
Because you need to anticipate what the chatbot wants you to say. And what it's then doing is there's a little bit of clever machine learning in the background that's looking at your semantic triples to pick out what you're actually saying, and then validating that with some kind of data table and giving you a standard response, or saying, did you mean one of these things? Click on the correct answer. And that feels like, what an awful coaching experience that would be, to try to work with something like that. So actually, there is no immediate threat for coaches of being automated out of jobs, because not even the most budget-driven buyer of coaching is going to look at that and think it's near enough. It isn't near enough. I think when we're thinking about artificial intelligence and this sort of idea of a robot coach coming along, it's worth thinking about the two different ways that technology gets implemented from an automating perspective. One of those is a very linear, if this thing happens, then do this. So there's a tool online, if this, then that, if you come across that, and you can then interface that with all sorts of different products, so that if you get an email that's got this particular topic in, then add this item to your Tesco shop. You can just connect random things together, and all it's doing is a nice linear sequence where it knows exactly what the input's going to be, it knows exactly what the output's going to be, and it will do it exactly the same every single time. So that's one kind. And then the other kind is this more sort of ambiguous, what you really want is just to have a random, purposeless conversation with some robot. And that's the whole Terminator world, well, how is it starting to think for itself? Does it have emotions? That's that sort of question.
Yeah.
Now, of course, coaching generally does sit in that second space. You want to come in, and as a coach, I know, even though I know a bunch of models and I've coached lots of people, I meet a coachee, a new one or one I've worked with lots of times before, and I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And as a coach, I need to be able to deal with that. If you can't deal with that, then you're not a good coach. However, robots are extremely good at that first one, to the point where you think, is there anything in coaching that we do something that's similar to that sort of linear process?
Yeah.
And there definitely is. So particularly thinking around a step that a lot of coaches follow or should follow, not all of the time, but some of the time, at least, maybe a lot of the time, would be helping a coachee define some clear goals.
Yes.
And this is just one example, but that process that you're meant to go through with a coachee, where you ask them, what is the goal? And you help them clarify it, and you set a timeline for it, and you ask what else they might need to do to help to achieve it, and who might be involved, and all of these extremely boring questions. Yet I know, they are helpful, aren't they? A robot will be infinitely patient and will sit there being non-directive and ask each of those questions in turn, listening to the response.
Yeah.
There's no time pressure or anything like that. How certain are you that you'll achieve that goal? It's those boring questions asked every single time. A robot will do that as many times as you want it to, for you and for as many other people as that you want.
Yeah.
At almost no cost. It's extremely efficient, highly scalable, and coaches find that bit quite boring. So I could easily imagine a big organization introducing a robot coach to all of their employees, and it then triggers a sort of, for this subset, they need some human coaching. For a lot of coachees, however, that's what they need the help with. They feel like they've done a job for 5 years and they're completely purposeless, and so they get given, historically they've been given some very expensive coaching, and what they really needed was just for somebody to go, what is it that you really want?
Yeah.
And they might go, well, I don't know. But then the robot will go, I don't know isn't the right answer. I need you to tell me what you want. And so it just fixes them down onto something.
Yeah.
So that is a good way for a robot to help loads and loads of people using coaching in a way that if you were buying coaching for your organization, you wouldn't see that as a replacement for coaching. You'd see it as an enabler for it.
Right.
And as a coach, I would love for a coachee to just come into every coaching session thinking you've already worked through a really clear time-defined goal, and all you want to do is tap into your emotions, or the more intangible bits, which actually are much more fun to work with as coaches. So the more ambiguous side of machine learning, it is developing, and if you believe the studies, then it will tell you that every profession will get to a point of being automated, and that has got to include coaching. However, by the point at which coaching would be automated completely out of all existence, because of the complexity that comes with coaching, it isn't linear or predictable or particularly measurable, but that's probably a different discussion. There are lots and lots of jobs out there that are much more so, like accountant or lawyer or, I don't know, lots of jobs. Lots of really important jobs, engineer, politician, probably. That by the time that coaching genuinely is pushed completely out of all existence, it won't be the robots that have taken our jobs. It will be the robots that have taken away our coachees' jobs, which stops coaches from needing to exist. So,
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, so I wouldn't, if you're a coach relying on coaching as your income, I wouldn't worry at all about AI stealing your job from you.
I think probably people probably, might have, heard the beginning of this conversation with a bit of a fear of it, but then to hear you say, look, your coaching clients can now turn up with a perfectly formed coaching topic, knowing exactly the direction of travel, thanks to a robot. It sounds pretty good, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I always, I don't know whether this makes me a good coach or a bad coach, but I don't feel particularly structured or consistent in the way that I begin my coaching relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got key points that I make sure that I've covered, but there's a little standard set of contracting questions that I feel like I have in my mind and would like to feel like I've gone through with every single coachee, and I know that I haven't. And so how helpful would it be to know that a coachee has gone through those themselves? I'm not asking those questions in order for me to hear it. I'm asking them in order for the coachee to get some more clarity, so they don't come to the end of every session and just think, that was a pleasant conversation. I want to feel that they're achieving something. And so, to automate a bunch of those processes. And by the way, most people who can use a computer can sequence that series of questions using, you've got online forms. I can't think, like SurveyMonkey or something like that. You can ask those questions, get somebody to type in an answer. They feel like they've answered the questions. You never need to look at them, but they've gone through the reflective experience. We can just do that now. Yeah. So it's you can stick a little avatar that's asking the questions and do it cleverly, or you can just work with Excel spreadsheet. It's the same output, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other technologies that are that we haven't spoken about that are even just on the periphery of things that are really experimental, that are really out there, that could potentially have applications to coaching? Is there anything else?
I don't know if you're going to regret having asked this question. I'll drop in just one idea as the sorts of things where it feels quite science fiction, and then you discover that it's already being used by lots of people. There's one particular tool that I think is quite interesting. It's a little headband that you can wear, and it will detect your brainwave frequencies.
Wow.
And you can connect that to an app that will change. It will change what you're hearing based on the frequency of your brainwaves, which then, because you're suddenly much more aware of what's happening inside your body, you can manipulate it. So at a very simple level, this same app, it works with heart rate as well. It will play some sort of sound based on how fast your heart is beating. And so by doing some breathing exercises, it isn't just that you learn how to do some good breathing exercises, it's that you learn through becoming acutely aware of what it's doing to your body as you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so what that's doing is, in that particular example, it's training you through more than just do step 1, step 2, step 3, because it's a good idea, but you're learning to do that, and you know exactly what it's doing, so that when you're feeling a bit stressed, you're not just doing a little breathing exercise or whatever it happens to be to calm you down because you should. You're doing it because you absolutely know this is how I slow my heart rate down.
Yeah.
And with brainwave frequency, it's exactly the same thing, really, that you're able to manipulate. There's a little app you can get on your phone which will stick some little floating particles in the space that you can see through your camera in your room, and you can move it around and look, and based on what signals you're sending, you're changing what's happening on your screen. Just in a mobile app, right? This is not
crazy, isn't it? I know, because I've definitely the application of I think is there a system called HeartMath? Anyway, I've spent a little bit of time in the world of elite sport, and that's pretty commonplace for elite athletes for the reasons you've just described, monitoring how they're feeling, their heart rate, and then being able to control it when they need to. But brainwaves, boy, oh boy, that does sound like science fiction.
Well, look, I mean, there's loads more than that, and we're getting people now. The Apple Watch, that's been around for years now, and having a smartwatch is not a weird thing now. A lot of people have a smartwatch, and there are, over the next couple of years, there's going to be an increasing number of facial devices that'll look like just a pair of glasses, and really not much bigger than just a normal pair of glasses, but that will be enabled to connect to your phone. Certainly you'll be able to speak on your phone using an earpiece that's set into the glasses, and all you'd need to do is just connect a little device into the side of the glasses that was detecting what's going on in your mind, and you'd be able to control this. The technology exists, it isn't there for consumers quite yet because of the price, but you'd be able to control your mobile device, or at least your smart glasses, just using your thoughts. That's quite exciting. What difference does that make in a coaching conversation? Well, I mentioned right towards the beginning of our conversation around that sort of objective data being helpful for increasing self-awareness. Well, if you've got a wearable like a smartwatch that's tracking your heart rate or how many steps that you've walked, or is listening to the tone of your voice and detecting the level of cortisol that you're currently generating, and therefore how stressed you might be or not, that's suddenly information that we could stick into a coaching conversation that we would you'd never even imagine that you could do that otherwise. Just asking somebody, how are you feeling, is the closest that we can get. And nobody ever knows how they're feeling. They just think of a word that seems to fit at the time. So to be able to say, oh, your cortisol levels are 28% higher than the average of our previous coaching conversations, what's happened? It's a level of insight that's we haven't got access to otherwise. So how many people adopt that, and how much it gets adopted into coaching conversations, that's a bit of a different question. But I'll take it right back to those basics. If a coachee wants to use that data and it is there and accessible, then in order to have that rapport and trust, I think as coaches we should be ready to do it. So knowing it's there helps us to do that.
And I think the comparisons with the Apple Watch are quite poignant, really. A lot of people are walking around with a medical grade device on their wrist, that monitors heart rate and all that sort of stuff. So interesting. I guess just to round off our conversation, it's been fascinating, Sam, but just a bit of a broader question, which is what would be your advice to coaches in our industry, about where we are now, about technology in the future, about our adoption of it? What would your advice be for coaches in the future?
I think broadly becoming au fait with technology concepts, how it works, and what it's good for, and what the risks are. I think that's just a good place to start. Buy my book. That's a good thing to do. I think, the things that it brings and the new risks that it presents, if you understand what they are, then you're able to be ready to deal with those. So from a very practical perspective, meeting through video conferencing is extremely common now. And because it is, then we've sort of built in an expectation with, well, sometimes you click on the link and Zoom is down. So what happens when do we just not do coaching, or have I already thought around, I know that because I'm using technology, there's a chance this might happen, and therefore I already have the coachee's phone number and I just call them, or I send them a link to a different platform and we use that instead. Thinking through that sort of thing, if you understand the basics of how the technology works, is much easier than trying to work it out for every single technology product that you ever come into contact with. So that would be the first thing. And then secondly, I think in order to meet coachees where they're at, being ready to use technology is better than not being ready to use it. Even if you don't, you end up using it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of products out there that coaches tend to use. Whiteboards seem to be quite popular, and I like some of these creative tools where you share some pictures or some sounds, or magnetic poetry is another one that I quite like to use. Just getting comfortable with what those are, and you do need to be quite comfortable with them, because you end up taking on the role of technical support as well as coach if the coachee hasn't used it before. To be able to become comfortable with that, so that at the right time you can think, we got to a point in the conversation where I think, should we just lay this out on a digital whiteboard because that will be the best thing to do right now, rather than just talking around it. And if the coachee says yes, then you're ready to do that, rather than feeling like you need to wait until the last minute. So with something like VR, there's no need for a coach to buy a VR headset today. But in 5 years' time, there might be a need for a coach to buy a VR headset, because a coachee says, we've got a meeting, here's my link in VR, see you there. I think, well, I've got to do something to do that. So should I learn how to use the tech as I'm coaching somebody, or should I learn it a year before I have to? That feels like a more sensible approach to me. So yeah, who knows what the future holds? It's exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting. It is exciting. Not without its trepidation, as all things are, but exciting. I'm with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. That's been really interesting. Appreciate your time.
Stephen, it's great to be with you. Thank you.